When I first saw the flyer, I thought it had to be a joke. Now, hiring, night server at Elsie's Diner, high pay, no experience needed, apply after dark. It was stapled to the bulletin board outside the corner laundromat, tacked between a missing cat notice and a half-torn flyer for a garage band. The paper was clean, too clean, like someone had just put it there. I stared at it for a while. Night shifts weren't exactly my thing, but rent was overdue and my cupboards were empty. When you're broke, desperation makes decisions for you. So I showed up that same night. Just before 10 p.m., I stood outside what looked like a 1950s-style diner planted in the middle of nowhere. Neon lights buzzed above the door, flickering in and out. Elsie's glowed pink, then died, then came back as SIE's. The whole building shimmered slightly, like heat waves on the blacktop, even though the air was cold enough to bite. Inside, the place was empty. No customers, no waitstaff, just a red leather stool spinning slowly at the counter. I was about to turn and leave when a bell rang. Not the door, but one of those old-timey kitchen bells, and a man stepped out from the back. He looked like he belonged in a museum. White button-up, gray apron, a face that had seen far too many midnights. "You're here for the job," he said. It wasn't a question. I nodded slowly. "Good. You start tonight. You only need to remember the rules." He handed me a laminated slip still warm like it had just come off a printer, though there was no sign of a computer anywhere. The heading read, "Tonight's menu rules. First shift. Do not serve coffee to anyone who doesn't speak. If a customer asks for the special, ask them to be specific. No orders after 3:03 a.m., no exceptions. If a child comes in alone, seat them at booth number 5. Never anywhere else. You may hear your name whispered from the kitchen. Do not respond. At 4 a.m. sharp, wipe down booth number 7, even if no one sat there, especially if no one sat there." I looked up from the list, ready to ask if this was a prank, but the man was already gone. The kitchen door swayed slightly behind him, but I hadn't heard a single footstep. I stood there like an idiot, holding a rule sheet like it was a sacred text. My only customer that night came in around 2:45 a.m., a man in a black raincoat, dripping despite the fact that it hadn't rained in days. He didn't say a word, just sat at the counter and stared at the pie carousel like it held state secrets. I remembered rule number 1, no coffee for the silent types. "Can I get you anything?" I asked. He blinked slowly, didn't speak. I poured him water instead. He stayed for 20 minutes, then left without touching his glass. I could have sworn I heard a soft scraping sound when he got up, like something dragging along the floor behind him. But when I peeked over the counter, there were no footprints, just the lingering smell of wet earth and something metallic. At 4 a.m. on the dot, I wiped booth number 7. It was spotless already. The cushions are cold. The salt shaker is full, but I wiped it anyway. As my rag passed over the formica, a deep chill ran through me, like I'd touched dry ice. My hand ached for hours after. By 5 o'clock, the lights started flickering again. I blinked, once, twice, and the diner was empty. No chairs, no counter, just me standing in the middle of a dirt lot. No building behind me, no neon sign, just air and a sheet of fog hanging over the road. And in my back pocket, I swear to God, was a new laminated card. Tonight's menu rules, second shift. I didn't want to look at it, but I knew I would, because somehow I already knew I had to come back tomorrow. The next night, I told myself I wouldn't go. I even went as far as throwing the first laminated rule card in the trash and unplugging my phone so I wouldn't be tempted to look at the time. But as the clock neared 9:30 p.m., something strange happened. The hum of the refrigerator stopped. My apartment fell utterly silent. Not quite. Dead. And then came the knock. I opened my front door, expecting maybe a neighbor or the super. But there was no one there. Only a single sheet of laminated paper sitting on my doormat. Tonight's menu rules. Second shift. Booth number 5 is reserved. Do not let anyone else sit there. If a customer asks you a question you don't understand, lie. The jukebox will play at 2:12 a.m. Do not unplug it. Do not dance. Anyone who orders milk must be given water instead. Always. There is no back exit. If you see one, do not approach it. Wipe booth number 5 again at 3:55 a.m., even if it's occupied. Especially if it's occupied. I didn't remember walking to my car, but there I was, pulling into the same dusty stretch of road. The diner was back, neon buzzing like nothing had changed. Except now there was a little girl standing outside, no older than 7, cradling a stuffed rabbit in one arm. She didn't knock, didn't say a word. She just looked at me with glassy, wide eyes and stepped inside as soon as I opened the door. I followed her in, my pulse thudding louder than the squeak of my sneakers on the tiled floor. She went straight to booth number 5 and climbed in. Her little bunny sat beside her like it was hungry too. I swallowed. "What can I get you?" She didn't look at the menu, just whispered, "Pancakes," but the kind that don't scream. I paused, unsure if I heard her right. Then I remembered rule number 2. If I didn't understand the question, lie. "Of course," I said, forcing a smile. "We only serve the quiet kind." She nodded, seemingly satisfied. I headed to the kitchen, trying not to notice that the order wheel was already spinning with a slip that read, "Booth number 5. Pancakes, silent." When I returned to the dining area, a man had taken booth number 3, middle-aged, wearing what looked like hospital scrubs, though they were stained with something dark around the cuffs. He smiled too widely and asked, "What year is it?" I choked on my own voice, then remembered the rule. 1962, I blurted. He grinned wider. Groovy. By 2:12 a.m., the jukebox powered on by itself. No cord, no coins, just static and a warped swing track that looped endlessly. I tried not to tap my foot. Even swaying my head made my chest tighten with dread. The girl in booth number 5 was gone, but the bunny remained, and it was staring at me. Its button eyes, once cute and loose, were now pulled taut, fixed forward with the intensity of a security camera. A low hum came from booth number 5, like a vibration I could feel in my teeth. Rule number 6, wipe the booth, even if occupied. I approached slowly. The bunny didn't move, but the hum deepened. I reached out and wiped the table. The cloth snagged on something. When I pulled it back, the edge was frayed, like it had been dragged across tiny teeth. The lights flickered once, twice, then the back wall shifted. A door now stood next to the restrooms, gray, windowless, with an exit sign flickering above it in green. Rule number 5. There is no back exit. If you see one, do not approach it. But something behind that door was scratching. Slow, deliberate scratches like nails on wet wood. I turned away fast. At 4 a.m., the humming stopped. The bunny was gone. The booth spotless. The diner faded again. I stood in an empty field. My hand still clutched the rag. In my back pocket, the rules for night 3 were already waiting. This time, I didn't even check how they got there. I didn't sleep after the second night. I tried, I really did. But every time I closed my eyes, I heard that jukebox crackling or saw those button eyes fixed on me. The worst part? When I checked my apartment the next morning, the rag I'd used to clean booth number 5 was still in my hand, damp and frayed like something had chewed the edge raw. At 9:03 p.m., my phone vibrated once. No caller ID, no text preview, just a notification, time to serve. That was all it took. Like a puppet on a string, I drove back to the lot. The diner had returned. This time it was different. The exterior shimmered like water, warping in and out of focus. A new sign hung above the door. Tonight's menu is fixed. Do not negotiate. Taped to the inside of the pie display was the fresh rule sheet. Tonight's menu rules, 3rd shift. All customers must receive exactly what they ask for. Nothing more, nothing less. If a man in a gray suit sits at the counter, do not let him see you blink. No pies may be served, even if they are requested. If a patron arrives already eating, take their order but never acknowledge the food. The bell will ring at 3 a.m. Let it ring. Do not check the kitchen. Leave by 4:04 a.m. If you're still inside after that, the diner will choose to keep you. The shift started quiet. A dusty silence clung to the walls, broken only by the soft whir of the ceiling fans. I stocked napkins and pretended to read the fake specials on the chalkboard. Bleeding beet burger, $6.66, and vanilla malice milkshake, extra cold. At 1:40 a.m., the bell above the door jingled. He entered like a paper cut, sharp and sudden, tall, angular, and dressed in a perfectly pressed gray suit. His shoes didn't make a sound. His skin was waxy, and his eyes didn't move. They were locked straight forward like glass marbles pressed too deep into a mannequin's skull. He sat at the counter. Rule number 2. Do not let him see you blink. I stood behind the register, eyes wide, trying not to even flinch. The seconds dragged like hours. My vision blurred. My lashes twitched. "Coffee," he said. His voice was low and grinding like a rusty hinge. I reached under the counter, grabbing a mug without looking down. I poured blindly, keeping my eyes on his. He didn't move, not even to breathe. I slid the mug toward him, never breaking contact. And then, he blinked, once, twice, slowly. Then he smiled, wide, too wide. His teeth were thin and pointed like sewing needles. "You blinked," he whispered, though I hadn't. He stood up and walked toward the door, dragging a single long fingernail along the countertop, slicing the laminate open like it was paper. As he stepped outside, he whispered again, not to me, but to the diner itself. 4:04. The moment he vanished, the diner exhaled. Not figuratively, literally. Every window fogged from the inside. My hair blew sideways like I'd stepped into the exhaust of a subway train. The napkin dispenser rattled. I collapsed against the counter, gasping. My eyes burned. I wasn't sure if I'd been holding my breath or if the diner had been holding me. At 3 a.m., the bell rang. 1 ding, then 2, then 7 in rapid succession. Rule number 5, let it ring. Do not check the kitchen. Something shuffled behind the doors. I heard wet footsteps, muffled voices. One voice screamed, a man's, short and sharp, like he had just realized something horrible before it cut off. The smell of burnt sugar filled the room. I waited. By 3:33 a.m., the sound stopped. The bell cracked. I didn't dare look to see how. At 4:03 a.m., I reached for the door. My hand hovered over the handle. The diner pulsed once, a low, warm vibration through the floor like it was alive and reluctant. Rule number 6, leave by 4:04. I stepped out. The night air hit me like a gasp. The building behind me sighed, and with a soft blink, like a curtain drawing closed, it vanished. I stood in silence. In my pocket, another rule sheet. Tomorrow's shift was already waiting. But for the first time since this nightmare began, I noticed something new. The rules were handwritten this time, and my name was at the top. By the time the fourth night rolled around, something in me had shifted. I wasn't just showing up anymore. I was being summoned. My body moved like it remembered things I hadn't lived yet. My hands reached for the keys before my brain agreed. The rule sheet in my pocket wasn't laminated this time. It was folded, wrinkled, written in jagged, frantic handwriting that didn't feel like mine, but somehow was. Tonight's menu rules, fourth shift property of my name. No reflections tonight. Cover all mirrors. Do not let them see you. If you drop anything, do not pick it up. Leave it where it falls. Customers may cry. Do not offer comfort. Do not speak unless spoken to. The dessert cart will roll out at 2:22 a.m. Do not touch it. Do not look under it. If someone enters wearing your face, seat them at booth number 2 and ask them nothing. Before leaving, knock 3 times on the freezer. Then walk away. Do not wait for a reply. The diner greeted me with a flickering sign and a new addition I hadn't seen before. A bathroom hallway lined with 6 mirrored panels, all uncovered. I scrambled behind the counter and found the closest thing I could to cloth. Aprons, towels, even a stack of greasy t-shirts labeled "Property of Elsie." One by one, I covered the mirrors, pinning corners under screws and napkin dispensers until the hallway looked like a bizarre thrift store art gallery. Still, I caught glimpses. Too many. The reflections weren't behaving. They lagged half a second behind. In one, my hands kept moving even when I stood still. In another, my reflection mouthed something over and over. Let me out. At 1:50 a.m., the first customer arrived. An elderly woman, eyes red-rimmed and glassy, sat in silence at the counter. She wept softly into a handkerchief that was far too clean. She never looked at the menu, never spoke. Rule number 3. Don't comfort them. Don't speak unless spoken to. I brought her a glass of water without asking. She didn't touch it. At 2:22 a.m. sharp, the dessert cart rolled out from the back kitchen. Slow and deliberate, like it was being pushed by something small and invisible. Cakes, pies, creme brulee, none of which we'd ever served before. Rule number 4. Do not touch it. Do not look underneath. But the cart whispered. I swear to God, as it passed booth number 4, I heard it speak. She's still hungry. She knows your name. Don't look under, not yet. I turned away, clenching my jaw so tightly my teeth ached. My hands gripped the counter hard enough to crack my knuckles. I focused on the humming light above me, counting seconds like prayers. Then came the worst part. At 2:37 a.m., I walked in, or something that wore my face did. Same clothes, same tired eyes, same coffee-stained name tag. It looked at me, smiled. Rule number 5. If someone enters wearing your face, seat them at booth number 2 and ask them nothing. It sat down at booth number 2. I brought it water without a word. I didn't drink it. It just watched me, quiet, smiling, like it knew how I'd die. When it finally blinked, I turned away. Behind me, the air chilled. The mirrors began to hum. I glanced back once, only once, and every covered mirror in the hallway had begun to bulge outward, like something behind them was pushing. I didn't wait to find out what. At 4 a.m., I grabbed my coat, but I remembered rule number 6, the freezer. I crossed the back kitchen, every step echoing like a warning, and stood before the rusted old walk-in freezer. It smelled of frost and bleach. I raised my hand and knocked. 1, 2, 3, silence. Then tap, tap, tap. I turned around and walked. Didn't run, didn't look back. I exited at 4:01. Outside, the diner flickered behind me like a dying TV signal. I waited, breath fogging, until the building dissolved into mist. I checked my back pocket. There was no rule sheet this time. Just a single torn napkin with one scrawled message, "Don't let them feed." The fifth night started wrong before it even began. I woke up at 11:42 p.m., fully dressed, standing in the middle of my kitchen. The burner was on. The rule sheet was already in my hand, crumpled and damp with sweat. I don't remember getting up. I don't remember reading it. But the paper was warm, fresh, and written in a dark, oily ink that bled through the page. Tonight's menu rules, 5th shift. Do not check your reflection. It may not be waiting. If a customer brings their own meat, prepare it without asking questions. Don't open the cooler, even if someone is knocking from inside. If you smell cinnamon, someone is lying. Figure out who, fast. Seat all customers facing away from the windows. Cover the glass if you have to. At 4:03 a.m., take off your name tag and leave it on the counter. Don't look back. By the time I arrived, the diner was pulsing with a reddish glow. The neon sign buzzed erratically. Elsie's flashing between pink and crimson, like it couldn't decide if it was open for business or open for feeding. Inside, the air smelled like metal and burnt syrup. The pie case was shattered, and every booth had been rearranged to face the wall. Booth number 3 had claw marks on the vinyl. At 12:18 a.m., a group of 3 came in. Tall, thin, dressed in what looked like butcher aprons turned inside out. They didn't speak. They just dropped a sack on the counter. It hit with a wet sound. The bag moved. Rule number 2. If a customer brings their own meat, prepare it without asking questions. I wanted to vomit, but I dragged the sack to the kitchen, careful not to look directly at whatever twitched inside. I turned on the grill, hands shaking, and began to slice. The flesh wasn't normal. It bled silver. The fat sizzled with a sound like whispering. It didn't smell like meat. It smelled like corduroy and rain. I plated it, served it. They ate with long forks, never looking at me, never blinking. When they were done, they stood in perfect unison and left without a word. The booth steamed behind them, faint smoke curling from the seats. At 2:09 a.m., the smell of cinnamon rolled through the air, thick, sweet, rotten underneath. Someone was lying. I checked the diner. Only 2 people remained. A teenage boy in booth number 6 staring at a cracked phone screen, and a man in a trench coat reading a newspaper upside down. Neither looked right. I walked over to the boy. "Want something to eat?" He blinked. I already ordered. He hadn't. I moved to the trench coat man. "Coffee?" He smiled. "Already drinking some." His hands were empty. Rule number 4. If you smell cinnamon, someone is lying. Figure out who, fast. I made a decision. I poured water over the boy's head. Cold. Brutal. He screamed, and as he screamed, his face melted, the skin sliding sideways like wax under a lamp. Beneath it, something sharp and too pale hissed. It bolted. Not toward the door, toward the pie case. Crashed through the frame. Vanished into the mist. The smell of cinnamon vanished with it. I didn't question it. I didn't chase. I just wiped booth number 6 and whispered a prayer I didn't believe in. At 3:40 a.m., a knock came from the cooler. Rule number 3. Don't open it, even if someone is knocking from inside. The knock turned into pounding. Then it spoke. "Hey," the voice said. It was mine. "It's you. I'm inside. I need help. I got locked in." I backed away slowly. My legs shook. "Come on, man. You can't leave me in here. You need me." The voice got louder. "You're not real. I'm real. Let me out." I pressed both hands to my ears and screamed. Not because of the voice, but because it was working. I believed it. I almost wanted to open the door, but I didn't. At 4:03 a.m., I walked behind the counter and unclipped my name tag. I set it down gently. The freezer went quiet. The lights flickered once, then held steady. I turned for the door. Rule number 6, don't look back. As I stepped outside, the windows fogged instantly. The diner began to fade, and just before it vanished, I caught one last glimpse in the glass. Me, still inside, wearing my name tag, smiling. I don't remember how many nights I worked at Elsie's diner. It could have been a week, a month, years. Time bent there, stretched and snapped like an old rubber band. But on what felt like my last night, and the rules told me it was, I showed up just before 10 p.m., trembling but resigned. The diner was back, more solid this time. The neon Elsie's sign buzzed softly, glowing a steady, warm pink. No flicker, no warping. The bell jingled as I opened the door. No customers waiting, just a new rule sheet on the counter. Tonight's menu rules, final shift. Take every order seriously, even the impossible ones. Do not refuse any request, no matter how strange. Never let the kitchen go silent. If the old jukebox plays your song, dance, but only once. Serve the special only when it's requested by name. At 4:04 a.m., lock the diner's doors behind you and never look back. I was shaking when the first customer walked in at 11:11 p.m. She looked like she'd stepped out of a faded photograph. A woman in a bright red dress, hair done up in pin curls, lipstick just smeared enough to be real. She sat at booth number 7, the one I had wiped so many times. "The special," she said simply. "Rule number 5, serve it only when requested by name." I nodded and turned to the kitchen. There was a hum. The oven was alive, glowing faint orange beneath the stovetop. I prepared the meal carefully. The special wasn't on any menu, no recipe. It was a mystery every night. I plated a steaming dish, smells of burnt sugar and something deep and wild, like forest earth after rain. I served it with trembling hands. The woman smiled, and then the jukebox clicked on. My song, the one my mother played on repeat when I was a kid. Rule number 4, dance, but only once. I didn't want to. I was frozen, but the jukebox didn't care. It played louder. The woman tapped her fingers. I stood, hands awkward, body shaking. I danced, only once. And as the last note faded, the woman whispered, "Thank you." She stood and walked toward the door. At 2:22 a.m., the diner filled with voices. Software laughing, whispering. I looked around. The chairs filled. Figures I couldn't see clearly, faces shifting like smoke. They ordered meals no one else could taste. They smiled when I served. And then, suddenly, silence. The oven stopped humming. The jukebox went quiet. The lights dimmed to a deep red. Rule number 3, never let the kitchen go silent. I ran to the stove, flipped knobs, slammed pots, anything to bring sound back. Nothing worked. At 4:03 a.m., the door locked behind me. I was alone, or so I thought. A soft voice came from the corner booth. "Time for your order." I turned slowly. The woman in red was back. "Have you finished?" I stammered. She smiled wider. "Then it's time." I felt hands on my shoulders, cold, firm, unyielding. The jukebox started up again. My song. I danced, only once. The diner faded. The world shifted. I was back on the roadside. No diner, no neon, just the cold night air and the rule sheet in my hand. Torn, wet, unreadable. But I knew one thing for certain. Elsie's diner wasn't a place. It was a curse, a trap, and I was still inside it.